Hey guys, it's Quinn, and today the film I've been avoiding vehemently for your eyes only. Hot off the success of The Spy Who Loved Me in Star Wars, the Bond series took a somewhat sellout move with 1979's Moonraker. It tried too hard to be cool and sci-fi, but it ended up just turning into a cheap Spy Who Loved Me supercut with overt product placement throughout, which made the entire film feel a little lackluster. Because of this, the series needed to go back to basics and hit reality in a way which we hadn't seen probably since On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Therefore, for your eyes only, in reaction to the Bond series Jumping the Shark got created. But sometimes less isn't necessarily more, as we will see in the first Bond film of the 1980s, For Your Eyes Only. After probably the best gun barrel in the series up to this point for music alone, we cut to Bond visiting the grave of no other than Tracy. So you know what, just take the L, codename theorists. I've argued this for years, and I think we can agree up to this point, at least through Brosnan, that Bond is the same guy in all these films. It's really just, it's a frustrating thing, which I'll talk about more in a later video, but he's the same guy. Anyways, we cut to a white cat. Wonder what that could mean. This pre-title sequence has always been a very difficult one for me. On one hand, the action is actually very entertaining, and by having Bond completely powerless in a situation, it's just something that we don't see enough in the series, so I'm glad when it happens. But Blofeld is the best villain in the series, and that's saying something, including Goldfinger, Red Grant. He's the cream of the crop. So to have him involved here and just throwing the character away, it feels kind of lazy, and it feels wrong for me, and this is why. Bond at the grave is picked up by a helicopter, which Blofeld quickly, through a remote control, overtakes. Bond, therefore, is trapped inside of a helicopter that Blofeld could just destroy at any moment, but Bond, being Bond, of course overtakes the helicopter and uses it to end up killing Blofeld. And what angers me about this so much is that if Blofeld was just some average henchman, this would have been a great scene. But because it was Blofeld himself, it just feels extremely underwhelming that this was the last time we see him for 35 years, until Spectre, of course. But one of the biggest problems with Diamonds Are Forever is the fact that Blofeld is given such a lame send-off. Granted, that was due to scheduling conflicts, so the writers had to redo some things, but it's lame. Same is true here. Why include Blofeld at all if it's gonna suck? Anyways, Blofeld dies, as we know. We have a subpar theme song that got an Oscar, shockingly, and we are off into the film. In a scene which very closely parallels the opening scene to Tomorrow Never Dies, we cut to a British spy ship designed to look like a fishing vessel. On board is a mysterious device called an ATAC, which is instructed to be destroyed by the crew after the ship is hit by a random mine in the water. The ATAC is never destroyed, however, so now the race is on. Britain versus Russia. Communism versus capitalism. The left versus the right to recover it. I'm sorry that, I'm trying to build this film up because, as you will see, the rest of the film is, well, slow. What also does kind of annoy me, though, is that this plot sounds like the opening to a 20-minute mid-season episode of a TV show. But, fuck it, let's be realistic in the series for a change and draw this out into a 2-hour movie, because that's what every single Bond fan wants in these spy adventures, people. Realism. Anyways, we cut to a man in Greece who was sent to check out the ATAC site. He is met by his daughter in this film's Bond girl, Melina Havelock, who, kind of like the film as a whole, is very good objectively, but just doesn't really stand out as anything special in the series. A flyby shooting occurs where both of Melina's parents are killed, leaving a salty Melina out for revenge. Meanwhile, we get a lecture on what the ATAC machine is, which is basically the equivalent of getting the nuclear codes. It turns out the British had used Melina's dad to find the ATAC for them in secret, but that some group had sent out a hit on him, so Bond's job is to figure out who sent out the hit and why. Following a lead, Bond goes to Spain, where we get the most 80s caricature of a movie scene you've ever seen, packed with, cheesy music, girls in a pool, and a bad German-looking guy trading money with a briefcase. Bond gets captured, but escapes after Melina in a scene which reminds me a lot of the Goldfinger complex escape from, Goldfinger, goes rogue with a crossbow. How she knew to be there and the fact that she was there at the same time, God only knows, but this scene does have some of the best action in the film, and the car chase in particular is one of the most entertaining in the series, in my opinion, complete with the stud-like yellow card. I really do have to be fair, though. This entire 10-minute block of the film is very good. Music, action, dialogue, and so, good on them for that. Melina tells Bond that she still wants revenge on everyone that the assassin, Gonzalez, knew, and Bond replies with some bullshit Chinese proverb about how revenge is bad. Remember that, people. Bond then goes to Q Branch and the quote-unquote identigraph to figure out who the German who was paying off Gonzalez was. After watching the incompetency of Q on a computer, which is kind of bizarre seeing as he's supposed to be brilliant at technology, we find out that the guy is currently working for Greek smugglers. So Bond is sent to meet up with a man named Luigi to learn more about the man and the smugglers. Confused yet? Let's keep going. Bond and Luigi meet up with an Anglophile named Christados, who says that the German man, Locke, works for a smuggler named Columbo as his right-hand man. Confused yet? Good, because we also met Bibi, an Olympic protege who is put into this film, I think, maybe to appeal to teenagers, I think, but God only knows. Bond runs into Melina and promptly sends her back home after they find out that the smuggling organization was trying to bait her to Greece to kill her. We then get one of the most uncomfortable scenes in this series, and again, it adds to the fact of why is BB here. Bond goes back to his room, and after shutting down BB's advances, like a stud, may I add, in the most bizarre scene in the series, probably till the various sex scenes in A View to a Kill.
He thinks I'm still a virgin.
Yes, well, you get your clothes on. I'll buy you an ice cream.
We head out to the Olympic stadiums. Finally, people, we get action. Bond and BB are doing a little skiing for shits and giggles when he is hunted down in another great chase sequence. At this point in the film, though, I'm not a huge fan of the music score. It's a weird combination of disco music and the N64 GoldenEye soundtrack that it just sounds kind of wrong. I get the series was trying to be hip and stuff. It's just they kind of try a little too far here. It is good that they're mixing up at this point in the series the music, but it's really distracting for me. That's not what music should be doing. It should be something that adds punch to the film. I think A View to a Kill is a very good example of it. It adds punch to the film, and I think a lot of people would agree. Without the music, the Duran Duran song in A View to a Kill, the film would drop even further down to the subpar level. Here, For Your Eyes Only, I think you have a good film, but the music sort of distracts it a lot, and I think it takes down the quality of the film a little bit. What I do really enjoy, though, is the build-up that this scene has when Bond has to do the ski jump. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but by having Bond do something that is so clearly awkward as a leadway into the ultimate ski sequence that this is, combined with the assassin that's chasing him from the back as he's going up the ski ladder, it is just very entertaining and I think overall intense. Everything post-jump is very good. It's a good action scene, but I personally think that the jump is sort of the peak in the entire sequence, whether for good or for bad. Bond then, as promised, says goodnight to BB, trying to get information from her on the guy who was trying to kill him earlier, Eric Kragler, who's the tall German blonde guy. This fails, and after surviving an attack at the ice rink, Bond finds Luigi dead, at the hands, of course, from the German assassin from earlier. It's a shame because he was legitimately a good character, and I think we haven't had a really good male ally in a long time, so it was good having him around, but, hey, can't win them all. Bond, after meeting up with Melina, goes to the casino to discuss a lead with Christados. Christados informs Bond that the only way to stop Columbo, which is the villain smuggler from earlier, is to kill him, which Columbo overhears on a tape that he himself planted on Bond's table. Bond takes Columbo's wife home as a lead, he wants to pursue, after she walks out in Columbo, where Bond basically just gets his rocks off. Ooh! Fun fact, because we haven't had anything interesting in the past 10 minutes. Columbo's wife is Pierce Brosnan's wife in real life. Yeah, now we know that. But the next day, back to reality, the German assassin, the Dove, kills the wife, and Columbo's men take Bond hostage as the Dove flees. You know, as being married to Brosnan, she is technically married to Bond. And Bond, when his wife gets killed, traditionally seeks revenge. Will Bond seek revenge this time? Will justice be served? Will Bond keep up his Chinese proverb about revenge crap? Well, don't turn the channel, folks, because who knows, maybe something interesting might happen soon. Please, let something happen soon. And lo and bloody behold, it comes in the form of Columbo, by far the best character in the film. Bond wakes up on board a mysterious ship, which turns out to be owned by no other than the presumed villain of the film, Columbo. Basically what was happening was Christados is a double agent for Russia that was using 007 to kill Columbo because Columbo knows all of his secrets, which we find out later. But what I really love about this scene is how it builds up Columbo to be just the slickest, the coolest of guys. One of the big complaints of mine for the Roger Moore era up to this point is that Bond has never really had a great ally outside of Leiter. So by inserting arguably the best in the series right here, it seems to lift the entire film from something that was just kind of boring into something that is fun and relatable, because that's what Columbo is. By being so warm to Bond, it also warms the audience to the character as someone we can root for. Therefore, the rest of the film almost takes on a buddy cop vibe, because us, Columbo, and Bond are working together to crack down on the German assassin, the Dove, and Christados. It's very well executed, and it's definitely one of the high points of the film, and that's because of Columbo himself. In order for Columbo to prove that Christados is actually a double agent, the two go on a raid of the warehouse where they discover opium. The Dove is protecting the place, but he flees as soon as Bond and Columbo basically overrun the place. Bond chases after the Dove and kills him in cold blood in revenge for the death of Luigi, in probably the most memorable scene in the entire film.
You left this with Ferrara, I believe.
I guess this kind of proves that Bond said the Chinese proverb to Melina solely to get laid. Bond meets up with Melina, and using some of the information found in her dad's logs, they pinpoint an area in the ocean that may be of some interest, and they head down to take a look.
Conserve your gas supply. Speak only when necessary.
Probably should have, mentioned that earlier, James, don't you think? Anyways, as Bond and Melina investigate the British spy ship with the A-Tech on board, they get attacked by a Rocky IV-ish robot before basically every horror movie takes over the film.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination.
Right, anyways, so Bond and Melina escape, and after a mano-a-mano fight with a mini-submarine, the pair are captured by Christados, who takes the ATAC from them. We then get one of the best torture, near-the-death escape, whatever you want to call it, in the entire series, when Bond and Melina are dragged by the back of a boat. I particularly like this scene because Bond has such control in what is on paper a really shitty situation. Instead of freaking out like a person would, Bond keeps his cool and immediately strategizes his escape instead of simply hoping that he'll get out of it, which I think is really cool. An interesting little story of mine was back in middle school, I used to go to a camp where we would fit like 12 people onto this very long tubing device on the lake. And for those of you who've never done tubing, it's basically skiing, but you lay down. Anyways, at the front of the tube was this triangle of rope, and I fell off of the tube and into the triangle, and I was stuck for maybe 5-10 seconds while the boat was still moving. And from personal experience, I can say it's literally impossible to move or do anything. My point is that Bond is tied up against someone else. He's getting injured. Sharks are chasing him, and he's still has the awareness around him to escape, almost as if, he's doing something in second nature. For me, that's pretty badass, and it's just one of the many examples of why this character is so much fun, even in what many, including myself, consider to be a slower film. Anywho, they escape, and when they think all is lost, they get help from maybe the greatest Bond ally of them all.
I tried to zeros.
As the saying goes, sometimes a great meme just writes itself, so let's just, move on.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned.
That's putting it mildly, 007.
In a pretty pointless scene, I think, solely to have this joke, Bond says he's going to meet up with Columbo to figure out where Sinceros actually is. So why not just cut straight to that scene, Quinn asks. I guess it's just one of the many enigmas of this film. So, yes, you guessed it, the gang goes to Sinceros, which is a monastery at the top of a rock. Thrilling. Finale on a rock. It's interesting. It was actually at this point in the film that I must have hit a wrong button. So the film went into French, and I watched probably the next 10 minutes of the film this way, and it was very interesting, actually. And you know why? Because for the first time all film, I didn't know what was going to happen next. Granted, yes, I have seen this film many times before, but the problem I've always had with this film for 10 plus years is that for a film that's so serious, everything is laid out in such a way that nothing comes as a surprise. When it was found out that Cristados was a villain, I literally responded with, okay, that's interesting. When I found out who was an assassin, I thought, wow, that's neat. What makes the really serious films like From Russia with Love or Casino Royale so interesting is you don't know what's going to happen. There is actual intrigue as to what may happen next. That's not to knock Roger Moore or any of the actors in this film. It's just I feel that the overall film was trying to go for a sort of less is more, but in doing so, a lot of the substance is lost. It's a good film, but it is a classic case in the Bond series where if it wasn't a Bond film, it probably would have been forgotten as a pretty good action film from the early 80s, which you'd find in your recommendations on Netflix. That's my honest opinion.
République, ce sera moi.
Qu'est-ce que ça va être chiant! Je veux avoir la médaille d'or!
Nous la voulons tous.
See, aren't you actually curious as to what's happening right now?
I will be your audience.
What a drag that'll be. I want to win the gold medal.
We all want that.
Ah, not so much fun now, is it? Anyways, I digress. Cristados is expecting the Russians and General Gogol will show up any minute, so it's a race against the clock for Bond and co to stop him. And again, credit where credit's due. The shots of Bond climbing up the rock is actually very fun, if not a little realistic, but who gives a damn. I like how, again, they throw Bond into an impossible situation, and again, he manages like a pro. It's just very cool. After narrowly beating out a guy who's trying to knock Bond off of the rock, Bond brings the gang up and then promptly leads the team to where all the bodyguards are, capturing them. Bond and Columbo go after a few more of the guards, and while Bond fights the blonde German and ends up killing him, Columbo goes after Cristados, who has the ATAC, in a battle of the smugglers. They tie, I guess, and Bond throws the ATAC off the cliff in probably the hardest throw I've ever seen for such a small windup, but hey, that's Bond for you. Melina's about to kill Cristados, where once again Bond pulls out all of the proverbs he's got, but Columbo ends up killing Cristados, which makes the entire revenge metaphor throughout the film kind of pointless, especially since Bond does kill Blofeld, the guy with the white cat, at the beginning of the film. So yeah, Bond's kind of full of shit, isn't he? So with the day saved, we get every single cliche ending thing in the books, which people kind of hate about this film, but I love it. We get the name drop, the bird chit-chatting with the most overly British Margaret Thatcher I think ever put on screen, Q being overly confused, and of course, Bond gets laid, which means mission complete in my books. And that, my friends, is for your eyes only.
Now, Gonzalez is at a villa near Madrid. Isolate him and apply the necessary pressure to find out who hired him.
As I discussed at the beginning of this review, For Your Eyes Only was really a go-back-to-basics kind of Bond film. On one hand, I think that this definitely makes For Your Eyes Only the cleanest Roger Moore film, besides maybe The Spy Who Loved Me, but I also think it makes it one of the most bland. For even though this is a good objective film, I do think that it is one of the weaker in the Bond series, and here's why. Bond films are supposed to have an interesting plot, but also have the escapism aspects of fun that the series has to offer. And besides the few pretty average action sequences and near-death experiences sprinkled throughout, there is nothing for me that just makes me go, wow. Take Golden Gun, for instance. Bad film, yes, but there's no doubt that the car chase and final shootouts were extremely memorable moments. This film doesn't have any of those moments, and I think that that's what sums up the film as a whole. It is good, but it has nothing memorable to it, and because of that, it is hard for me to highlight this film as anything special. And I'll just go through all the aspects right here. The pre-title sequence, sure, it was exciting, but it was ultimately disappointing in its use of Blofeld. The theme song had a good few notes from the piano, but the rest is kind of lackluster. The villain and Bond girl do their jobs, but they just weren't that special, and the villain plot was just the most boring version of From Russia with Love or Goldfinger that I think could have possibly been created, and there's no particular action scene that would rank as a highlight in the series. It's bland, people. That's really it. It's bland. So why do I say that this is objectively a good film? Well, for me, there is no glaring problems, which is something that you can't say for most all Bond films. The plot, yes, it's slow, but it's well done for what it is. The acting, I think, is pretty good, with the exception of BB, who is... well, let's just talk about her while we're here. BB shouldn't be in the film, and she makes me feel bad for Bond, who I think just feels creeped out whenever he's near her. I legitimately believe she was in the film for two reasons. One, she's an excuse to have scenes near ice rinks, which was shockingly a big part of the film. And two, she's supposed to appeal to teenagers, but honestly, I think that this was everyone's favorite BB moment.
Brink, what have you done to her?
Go back to your room.
You can go to hell.
So, yeah, anyways, besides that, though, I think that the rest of this film is good. It's just nothing really pops. So, overall, if you want a good movie minus all the Bond craziness, this is your film. It's clean, it's entertaining, but there just isn't really any flavor to it. It's vanilla. If you want a raw Bond film, you are better off going with a different Roger Moore film. Next time, we're going to see the reaction to the reaction that is For Your Eyes Only in one of the weirdest James Bond films in the entire series, and one of my personal favorite and guilty pleasure films, 1983's Octopussy. So what do you guys think of For Your Eyes Only? Whatever it may be, leave it in the comment section below, and as always, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao!